The scrapping of the subsidy on petrol by President Bola Tinubu may have set his administration on a path to vindication or public judgment strictly on the basis of his economic policies. At the moment, however, the president's preoccupation seems to be getting it right with appointments and a friendly National Assembly. Dr. Hakeem Ahmed is Director of Publicity of influential pressure group, the Northern Elders Forum. He joins us now to discuss the criteria that should matter in the race for Senate President, fuel subsidy removal, and President Tinubu's first set of appointments. Good to have you, sir. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So let's begin with the National Assembly. In a few days, the 9th National Assembly will be, done and dusted. And there's been a lot of clamor, some focusing on zoning and others saying there should be a level playing field. I'm just wondering what the position of the Northern Elders Forum is on this matter.
Our position is based on respect for constitutionalism. The Constitution provides for three arms of government: the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. It also gives them substantial autonomy and in some interrelationship. It's important that that separation is respected by all arms. And unfortunately, it appears as if the executive arm of government is encroaching into the sphere of autonomy and integrity of the National Assembly, and that is not good. It's not good for the National Assembly, the legislature, and it's not good for the executive. And so we would like to see a situation where elected representatives of the people are allowed to choose who should lead them. Choose them in a way that gives them freedom to decide, even if they have to take into consideration factors like interests of their parties. There are eight parties in the National Assembly represented in both houses. And other factors like their preference. These are people who are responsible enough, mature enough, sophisticated enough to understand that Nigeria is a very complex country. You have to govern it on the basis of spread, inclusiveness. And we would like to see a National Assembly for once that will grow and develop on the basis of the decisions of the legislators, not on the dictates of somebody from outside the National Assembly. That's our position.
Okay, so we're looking at the Senate race for the Senate presidency may have become tougher as the two contenders, former Governor Godswill Akpabio and now Abdulaziz Yari, at loggerheads over the number of lawmakers loyal to their camps. But if we're looking at your take on the jostle for the leadership position for the Senate presidency, we're looking at a scenario where it looks like it has become common for Northerners to always make a case for the Northern interest. Is the Northern interest bigger than the national interest? In whose interest is an indivisible Nigeria?
I don't know which Northerners you are talking about who are always making a case for the interests of the North. We make cases for the interests of Nigeria. The North is part of Nigeria, and the North is as entitled to say that we should be considered as part of this country as anybody else. There's nothing wrong with that. Yesterday, I saw former Governor Wike sitting majestically in a chair and saying, "Bring the Senate presidency to the South-South." If somebody like Governor Wike can say that, what is wrong with the North, for instance, saying, we would like to see the number 3 position go into the North? This business of the North is always asking for itself. Who should we ask for? Who should plead for the North other than Northerners? But we have a government in place now that has been produced substantially by Northern votes. Close to 60% of the votes that President Tinubu got came from the North. That was a choice that Northerners made. He ran against a Northerner. As things stand now, the record shows that he got most of his votes from the North. So if the North says we would like to see some level of reflection that we matter in this country, there's nothing wrong with that. However, the North recognizes also the fact that it's only one part of Nigeria, and other parts of the country are entitled, as much as the North is entitled, to see some representation of their own interests in the northern part of in Nigeria, in the scheme of things. And that's why we're saying these 109 people in Senate and the 360 people in the House of Reps, they are Nigerians. They were elected by Nigerians. They know what they are doing. We should respect them. They know everything we are talking about: inclusiveness, fighting for your region, fighting for your religion, all this. These are very mature people who were given a mandate by their people to go and defend and protect their interests. Why don't we allow them to exercise the decision? Why do we need to come in and start getting involved in terms of telling them who their leaders should be? And if they choose a northerner to be the Senate president, fine. If they choose a southerner to be Senate president, fine. We would live with it. But no one should get involved in terms of deciding this one should go through this, except the people who will be led and live with the consequences of their choices.
Well, earlier on, Dr. Baba Ahmed, you mentioned that it looks as though the executive involvement is more or less an encroachment. And I'm wondering if, for those who don't see it as an encroachment but an intervention because of the reality, of course, for instance, the Muslim ticket, and we do have 6 geopolitical zones that are seeking representation. Do you see a reason why the executive should intervene and not necessarily encroach based on your outlook and the realities on ground?
That's a very interesting play on words, encroachment and intervention. I don't know where you draw the line. Where I draw the line is where the executive thinks it knows better than the legislators who have been elected to represent the interest of Nigerians, Christians, Muslims, Northern, Southern. The executive knows better than the legislators who should lead them. His faith, his religion, his region, should not be decided by the executive. It is interference in any way or form. If the executive or one party that is ruling, APC, decides to impose a leadership, whether you call that interference or interest, whatever, imposes a leadership on the National Assembly or interferes in the process of a free selection or election of leaders, it is an encroachment that is not good for the National Assembly. It's not good for the executive. Because if you have a hand-picked leadership by a partisan interest, even if it is the leading partisan interest, it could backfire. We've seen it done before. It didn't work, and it's not likely to work. We don't want the executive to decide who should lead the legislature. Now, you talk about interference and religion and faith. The president, the head of the executive arm of government is from the southern part of this country. And I say again, and we have no apologies for saying this. We're very proud that the Northerners are very accommodating people. Northern voters substantially gave President Tinubu his victory. The head of the judiciary is from the southern part of the country. That makes 2 out of the 3 arms of government, all from the southern part of the country. If I ask you, in the name of equity and justice and fairness, somebody makes a case that the head of the 3rd arm of government should come from the north, on what ground would you fault that? But again, I would say leave that to the people who will be led by this. If they think that equity and justice demands that of all the people jostling, there are many of them, I don't even know some of the names, but everybody who's jostling represents some kind of interest, Northern, Southern, Christian, Muslim. Let them decide whether the North deserves to be seen among the top 3 positions in government or not, and whether a Northerner should have one of the arms, should be head of one of the 3 arms of government or not. Allow them to choose who they want. They choose a northerner or a southerner, a Muslim or a Christian. It is not the business of the executive arm of government. It is their business. We have done our job. We've elected them. It's up to them to choose who should be their leader.
All right. Speaking about choosing, making choices, we're going to very shortly talk about the new appointees, of course, Agbajabiamila as the Chief of Staff and Akume as the SGF. But I would like to ask you this. In this conversation about who emerges as the leader of the House of Senate and the House of Representatives, outside of the issues of competency and capacity and religion, there have been allegations that the race to the Senate presidency has been a fit of financial inducements, whereas the highest spender is set to win. Can you clarify this or share your experience, with the information that you have? Is this what is happening behind the scenes?
I have no way of knowing that. I'm not a member of the House. I'm not a senator. I have no relationship with the people who are contesting. And I hope it is not true. I suspect, given the way Nigerian politics is, some kind of money or some form of other inducement may have been shared. But to be honest with you, I can't answer your question with a yes or no. It's unfortunate that in Nigeria we always associate things like this with some form of bribery. People lose faith in leaders if they think they have bought their way into offices. And it's sad, but it happens. But you are asking the wrong person, because I really don't know whether money is changing hands or not, or inducements are being made in one way or the other. I don't know. What I would say is that...
Please go on.
Go ahead.
Oh, please, you can land on your point and then
what I would say is that I think that the executive will make a very good start by making sure that it allows the legislature to choose its leadership, and then it cultivates a very constructive and very productive relationship with whoever emerges. It's better that way. This way, you have a leadership that owes its loyalty to its immediate constituency, and its immediate constituency is colleagues in both the Senate and the House, and then a leadership that can stand on some basis of integrity and confidence that it was produced by colleagues rather than by the presidency. And then I think that provides a better basis for a healthy relationship to exist between President Tinubu and the Senate President and the Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Noted, Dr. Baba Ahmed. Now, in the event that your advice falls on deaf ears and this zoning formula that we've been hearing about sticks, what would be the reaction of the Northern Elders Forum to this?
Well, let's say our advice is that President Tinubu's administration should steer clear of getting deeply involved or involved in any way, or the party, in deciding who should lead the National Assembly. That's our advice. And so you are asking, what if they don't take our advice? We'll live with it. We've given them the best advice we can. We wish them well. We believe that President Tinubu needs all the support and the cooperation of Nigerians. The North will continue to support him. The North will continue to provide him all the goodwill that he needs to succeed. And it will be a wrong decision if he goes against our advice. But hey, he's the president. He will live with the consequences of his decision. But we've done our job. We've advised him to do the right what we think is the right thing. If he doesn't do that, and he thinks that there's a better way of doing that than when we're advising him, we'll respect that decision. He is the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. He's our president. And I keep saying this, and it is not a small point. A huge number of Northerners voted for him rather than a Northerner. And that should count for something. And we speak for Northerners, and we're saying to him, coming from the North, we think that, one, he should allow National Assembly members to choose their leaders, and two, no one should stop members of the National Assembly from electing a northerner just simply because he's a northerner. If they choose a northerner to lead the Senate, for instance, that's their choice. No one should frown on this. There are many, many levels at which you can reflect inclusiveness and integration. Then let's leave the National Assembly and move on to other areas. The President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria has massive powers to create balances and address the issues of inclusiveness. But a situation where you have all heads of the three arms of government coming from one part of the country is not very healthy.
Okay, taking a note from your book to moving on to other areas, let's talk about fuel subsidy for a bit. Now, how can the current administration, because this is all about being able to save money off of the budget, how can the current administration ensure transparency and accountability in the management of the funds that will be saved from fuel subsidy removal to build trust with the labor unions and the general public? And then on the side of how it looks to the people, how can they also effectively communicate its intentions and the necessity of removing fuel subsidies to now gain public support?
I think the first step would be, has been taken, and we commend it. We think that it's inevitable that the subsidy has to go. We think that President Tinubu has shown courage and political will. What he needs to do now is to follow up. One, he needs a government as quickly as possible, made up of credible Nigerians, competent Nigerians, people who have records of personal achievement wherever they come from, people whose integrity is beyond questioning. Those people should be in place in the next few weeks to help him to find solutions and alternatives to the subsidy, and then to cushion the effect of the subsidy. As things stand now, is just him and a few key officers. I'm not saying those officers are not important, but he does need a government. The second thing is that everybody understands the reason why the subsidy has become unsustainable is because it's been surrounded by literally thieves, people who are stealing in the name of the regime, of the subsidy regime. Government after government after government have said, we will remove the subsidy because there's no transparency, there's a lot of theft, we are not sure how much we're paying, we're not sure how much we're consuming. We want those people to be brought to book. It's not enough to tell Nigerians, sorry Nigerians, we cannot continue with the subsidy because we can't understand how the country is broke. We can't pay for it anymore. Well, what has happened to the monies that we were paying? Were we actually paying the right amount of money, or are we being scammed? And if we are being scammed, we want to see those people. It's not just enough for President Tinubu to look for palliatives and give Nigerians. He needs to go through this battle. The real battle is not about subsidy, it's about corruption. And he has to push the battle against corruption beyond the subsidy. We want to see the people who may have been stealing money in the name of corruption being identified, being prosecuted, and being punished. We want to see the same kind of will and courage applied in other areas. Foreign exchange, smuggling of crude, stealing of crude oil, scams all over in this country. So my personal opinion, and I'm speaking for myself here, is that President Tinubu has actually stirred the hornet's nest. He's just touched one part of the economy that is being destroyed by corruption. He needs to fish out the people who have been guilty for this, and he needs to punish them. And Nigerians need to do that. If he can do that, we can accept any kind of hardship, provided you show us the people who caused the problem. And then he should move on. So he has to define his administration. It needs an identity, and that identity must be that it will be an administration that will fight corruption and finish corruption, and fight it everywhere it is until it is this country is rid of corruption. Now, it sounds like a tall order, but that exactly is what Tinubu has started. He cannot turn back now and say, I'm drawing the line. There are no lines he can draw. None. If things have happened before his time and there is evidence and we can see the people who have been doing these things, let him bring them to book. And let him move to other areas too. Nigerians want to know who is stealing our money. The one who is the people who are causing this problem. We would accept hardship, but it's not good enough to tell us we've stopped the subsidy and Nigerians will just simply roll over into more difficulties. So it's the battle line has been drawn by President Tinubu himself, and it's important for him to understand this. But he needs a good team in place to help him. He needs good ideas, and he needs the courage to push this battle against corruption, because that's what it is. Well to push this battle against corruption and to fish out people who are doing this.
Duly noted, Dr. Baba Ahmed. You mentioned earlier when we were talking about the 10th National Assembly that there will be other areas in which the government can address inclusiveness. So if we want to talk about the criteria that should be used when in the selection of the first set of appointments, what are your expectations regarding that?
Well, I hope that there are people right now looking at all over Nigeria. First of all, every part of Nigeria must be included in governance. At some levels should be fairly balanced. Spread should be balanced. But no one should work with President Tinubu unless he has been scrutinized and his past, his record of performance, wherever he or she comes from, his level of integrity, wherever they come from, meet a very, very high standard. President Tinubu needs to run this administration with the highest bar possible. President Buhari has brought the level of governance to the lowest level. Tinubu's challenge, entire challenge in this country, so long as he's president, is to raise that bar very, very high. And the way he should do that is to make sure that no one is appointed by him purely on the basis of the fact that they have political credentials, they were this and they were that. He needs to bring in people whose credibility is beyond question, whose capacity to work independently is beyond question, whose honesty and integrity is beyond question, and whose competence is such that they can actually understand his message and then take that message down to the level where the ordinary Nigerian is touched. And they exist. There are many, many very good Nigerians. There are honest Nigerians. Not every Nigerian is corrupt. There are Nigerians who are very competent. He needs to look for them and make sure that he puts them in place as quickly as possible. Time is of the essence. He needs a government in place. He already has a crisis in hand. He's looking for ways in which he can cushion the effect of the removal of subsidy. I'm not sure right now, with the Chief of Staff and SGF and him and the Deputy, that isn't enough on the ground. And it's quite possible that he's harboring people who caused the problem and they're still sitting there. And they can fight back, and they will fight back. If I am the one who caused the problem and you're asking me to find a solution to the problem, I'm not likely to do that. So he has a lot of work to do. He needs to flush out people who were cause of the problem, and if he has evidence that they did more than just cause the problem, but they dipped or they were part of the cartels that caused the problem, we want to see people prosecuted. So that's the kind of thing. He needs to punish those who destroy the economy, and he needs to bring in people who will not steal public funds, who will work for Nigeria and who would work for him.
Duly noted, Dr. Baba Ahmed. Now, still on the criteria, when it comes to these appointments, I just want to make reference to one of the observations and recommendations that was made by the international community, international observers during the elections. It was stated that there was a lot of, ethnic bigotry that was observed, whether it be online, social media, and whatnot. And one of the recommendations was that it was important for those that would assume offices of authority to distance themselves from such individuals. Do you expect to see that reflected in selecting these individuals?
Yes, and one way you can do that is to make sure that, well, look, how is this bigotry manifested? Faith, I'm Christian, or he's a Muslim, religion, ethnicity. This one is Yoruba, this one is Igbo, this one is Hausa Fulani, this one is this. Region, northern, southern. Those are the stuff of which this bigotry is made up. Make sure you have enough a balanced administration. And there are toxic appointments he shouldn't make. People who are identified as having exercised influence over fueling bigotry, or people who have exercised responsibility, governors, former ministers, people who have been involved in wielding power in such a manner that it fuels this bigotry shouldn't have a place in this administration. There are toxic appointments. There are people who President Tinubu shouldn't touch. Otherwise, he will be inheriting somebody else's enemies. There are people who have done or said many, many things that this country has no business dealing with. He should avoid them. They will not help his administration in spite of whatever political value they may bring in. They are likely to be a liability because Nigerians will say, he's filling his government with these people. They are the same people who caused this problem. So it's important. He should understand how much battle he has to fight with the Muslim ticket. It's time to begin to address the fact that being a Muslim doesn't mean that he is going to fill his cabinet with Muslims.
Well said.
Or that he has to compensate Christians because he has offended them, because he has not offended any Christian. And he has not done any favor to a Muslim because he has elected it. Beyond this, anybody who comes to work for him at any level must be a person who is not identified first as a Christian or a Muslim.
Duly noted.
But he must be sensitive to religion.
Dr. Hakeem Baba Ahmed, Director of Publicity and Northern Elders Forum spokesman, we'd like to say a big thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us on Newsday. We appreciate your analysis as well.